Hey guys, this is RuRoniK95 here. It's time to do a re-review of a movie, once again, for the very first time, in honor of its anniversary, because this is the very first time that I wanted to do one, particularly, for the very first time, though. So, for today, I'm going to be reviewing the 1979 action and thriller film that was based on the 1965 novel of the same name by Sol Ulrich, The Warriors. And yes, that's what I'm going to talk about. That's why. So, for the production of how they made The Warriors, they wanted to do this for the whole setting in New York City as well, particularly. Well, of course, that explains why of how they wanted to make this in the production for the film like this as well. And beyond that, it's particularly of how what Walter Hill wanted to make this movie, particularly in the fact of how, just to consider how they originally wanted to have the Warriors to be like an all-black gang, but Walter Hill has disagreed with that, so they just wanted to have the idea of how the agreements goes. Of course, that explains for the fact as well. And that's the reason of how I can come across for that. But then again, just to consider how that this movie was directed by Walter Hill, which I mentioned earlier, who is known for 48 Hours and Another 48 Hours, which ironically it was the prequel to the first film, 48 Hours, which I haven't covered those to do a movie review on those two yet, but I will get back at those at this point. That's from what I understand for that as well. So, let's continue on with the plot in this one. So, for the plot, it begins of how it starts off in New York City, and this how it all began, of how with all these gangs, including the Warriors, wanted to be into the park at the Summit, at like a meeting rally, especially, and particularly of how we get to see Cyrus, who is the leader of the Gramercy Riffs, particularly, who is like your typical Messiah-like leader, particularly in this park, as how it goes. When he was telling all the gangs that can they dig it in this particular way. And everything's just going quite well, despite how all these gangs were cheering and on in this one particularly, especially at the Summit. Meanwhile, Luther, who is the leader of this leather gang called the Rogues in that one, pulling out a gun, and he basically shot Cyrus through the chest, which eventually killed Cyrus. But then it wasn't long until it caused a riot, what the gangs caused in the Summit during the meet. But this wasn't long until the police arrived to raid the Summit, and then Luther wants to blame one of the Warriors that they falsely accusing them that they claimed that they shot Cyrus, but they did not shoot. But they never killed Cyrus until one of them has left. The leader, who is the of the Warriors, got beaten up, particularly at the Summit. Like, they were beating the shit out of him to death as well. But the other Warriors had escaped the riot from the Summit as well, because they wanted to take another catch at a subway train right from the territory. But then the Gramercy Riffs wanted to know who are the Warriors, if they could send out to the radio DJ that there's something for the Warriors as well. But then the Warriors had a outrun the Turnbull ACs, who are like a gang of skinhead heads as well. They're on this school bus, wanted to attack the Warriors, but the Warriors had to outrun them, which they had to outrunning them, especially on enemy lines in this particular way, because then they had to get to the subway train in that one, just to catch to another street as well, until they encountered the orphans on a different street, especially in how when they first met, of how they were accused. If they wanted to know that the orphans wanted to know if the Warriors ever killed Cyrus in that, but until he met Mercy, who is basically one of the orphans' girlfriend as well, particularly, and that's considerably of how and why how this happened, particularly of what's happening in this film, particularly, and then it decided to come for this as well. And on top of this, that they wouldn't pick a fight with the girl, but they ignored. But this, until she comes to her mind, if she would pick Swan, who is the war chief of the Warriors or something as well, and that sets the orphans off, like that they were going to attack the Warriors, but they just one of them has thrown a Molotov cocktail at the orphans just so they could run from their territory, and particularly they wanted to catch the subway train. By this time, of course, right when the Warriors reached to the other station on there, they had to outrun the police in that one, particularly because it was catching on to their territory of what's going on in that one as well, particularly. It seems to be going pretty well of how they wanted to do this. One of them had to go separate, especially for any members of the Warriors had to outrun the police separate. But this wasn't long until happening on Riverside Street in New York. They were encountered by the Baseball Furies. One of them had to outrun them if they want to take off. They thought they'd lose them, but it wasn't. But it was too late that they fought, because they were following them on their territory, especially of how could have ever caused in this whole happening on enemy lines, especially of what this happened in this movie. And then one of them wanted to pick into the encounter, besides outrunning the Baseball Furies, this led to Ajax, who is another, who is a other member of the Warriors, particularly of how, and this explains from how this happens, and this explains to the fact of how he wanted to pick a fight with the leader of the Baseball Furies, and then they had to beat up the Baseball Furies in the whole battle like this, particularly, despite that the Baseball Furies had those baseball bats as a weapon as well, and the Warriors has knocked them all out, particularly, which is a good thing of how they have beaten all the Baseball Furies up in a battle as well. And then they left as well. By this time, of course, Ajax has encountered some woman who was on the bench as well, when he always wanted to pick a harass with some woman as well, when he says he likes it rough as well. But then she pulls out some handcuffs onto Ajax's wrists of his arm, and like she's all undercover or something. Ajax wanted to beat her up, like, because he has had it, like, he wanted to attack her, but then he knocked, when the police arrived, he basically kicks the cop and right in the face, but then the cop has hit him with the right in the chest, and you would see blood all in Ajax's mouth, and then he got arrested after the Warriors encountered as well. It seems to be doing quite for the fact as how this particularly happened, until the other one saw the all-girl gang called the Lizzies have wanted to be one of the Warriors' girlfriend, and then they invite them to the places, especially for the romanticism ways of how it's happening in the city, as when they're playing music as well. And the Lizzie, one of the Lizzies basically wanted to know that that one of them were the famous warrior, or the guys that they thought, because they knew that if they shot Cyrus, Rembrandt tells the other member of the Warriors, saying that the women are packed with weapons, so they had to fight off the Lizzies, but one of them had the gun that could have almost shot in one of the Warriors, but they had to outrun the Lizzies. At this point, of course, when Ajax wanted to have a little moment with, Mercy is with, well, no, not Ajax, Swan, yeah. Well, Mercy wanted to be with Swan, who was the war chief of the Warriors, as how their own little moments of romanticism as well, especially from the subway train after they wanted to outrun this police officer in the subway tunnel. The Gramercy Riffs wanted to alert, of course, that one of the Warriors has never shot Cyrus, because they want to know who is the real killer who shot Cyrus. Not for a while, of course. One of the rogues with their warlord, or Luther, who is the gang warlord of the rogues, always wanting to figure out if how, particularly when it has fought with some having a good time as well, or something like that, as how this goes. And for the obvious reason is that he basically wanted to do, like, when this woman told her what about the money that he owes her, but he yelled out for what to pay for it, and then he throws it at her, which is a harsh kind of thing. They wanted to know, because other than the Warriors fought the Baseball Furies, the Orphans, as well as the Lizzies as well. But things just didn't go quite pretty well of what this happened as how it goes. And then, because the Gramercy Riffs found out that Luther has shot Cyrus, because he may be the real killer, despite that Luther is the gang warlord of the rogues in that one. And by this time, of course, the Warriors wanted to find out that the punks, which are those group of gangs in like these overalls and rollerblades, are up to something. When the punks wanted to attack the Warriors, but the Warriors had started to fight the punks in that one, in this particular one. Right as this wasn't long until the punks were defeated by the Warriors in a bloody battle as well, of how this goes. And then, for the most part, when they were get on a train, the subway train all together as well, they noticed the prom couples are on the subway train because it came by surprise of how when they were trying to find their way back to Coney Island as well. Morning comes and the warriors got back to Coney Island, which is their home territory as well. But they wanted to figure out a way of what's going to happen next, if something's up to. Luther and his recruits of this gang called the Rogues are in this car, wanted to track down the warriors, but they're up to something. When they were under the bridge, the bridge, and right where that Coney Island is, they wanted to figure out if they have the chance to fight off against the Rogues, but then they just found a way to figure it out. When this was long until Luther taunts one of the warriors to come out when he has those 3 bottles as a fingers as well. Swan, on the other hand, tells the warriors that are they packed because they gotta take out the Rogues right into the beach sand. So this time, when they arrived at the beach in Coney Island, the warriors wanted to say to Luther that why did he shot Cyrus for no reason when Luther says he likes doing things to get away with it. So they wanted to fight the Rogues one-on-one. But when Luther wanted to pull his gun to kill the warriors, but then Swan throws the switchblade right into Luther's wrist. So, that was almost a tense feeling of how this happened. But of all of this, the Gramercy Riffs arrived and they found the real killer, because they found Luther, who is the leader of the gang warlord leader of the Rogues. They found him, what they're looking for. He thinks that the warriors did it, but they did not, because one of the Gramercy Riffs told the warriors that they're good. But then the Gramercy Riffs has no choice but to kill Luther and his gang recruits who are part of the Rogues, because they were all killed by the Gramercy Riffs. Because it turns out, particularly of how it all happened, and then you end this movie with the song "In the City" by Joe Walsh at the end of this movie. And that's how you end this movie. So that's pretty much the basic plot of how this happened in The Warriors as well. I must say, particularly, from what I can understand, for the fact, then again, particularly, the production, is very great, though. They wanted to make a movie like this on a $4 million budget, especially for what Walter Hill had a lot to do. They originally wanted to cast Robert De Niro to play Cowboy, who is one of the members of the Warriors in that movie, but he turned down the role in that one as well. And also, particularly, if you could imagine as well, as far as I know, and at this point, for how this movie gotten so famous, though, well, particularly, there is a certain way of how this happened as well. When they made the production on The Warriors, is that it seems to come quite pretty well of how this goes as well. And on top of all of that, this was the certain way of how this goes for the whole thing of that as well. And for the movie, for a thing like this, However, this movie was released on February 9th, 1979. Yeah, because it's been big year, start about many years ago, if you ask me, for this one as well. Especially for the release on there. When this movie was released in theaters, this has gotten a lot of controversy. Those groups were protesting the movie as well, particularly, because they were saying they thought it was promoting violence in the movie as well. When it's actually a R-rated motion picture, even a 14-year-old teenager has bought a movie ticket to see the movie, The Warriors, because they just, I mean, they thought they can get away with seeing a movie like this as well. Like, especially on how this gotten a lot of controversy for this movie as well. I mean, like, when it was on ABC News in the 70s as well, like, if they thought they were allowing, when they had to bring extra security just to prevent how there's not any chaos happening, especially at the movies as well. And on top for this as well, some of the despite that this movie is rated R, because it's for anyone who's not under 17, they might be acquiring for a parent or a guardian, especially for a movie that is R-rated as well. And for a film like this as well, these teenage kids had all wanted to get away with seeing this movie, but they just got thrown out of the theater because it's not even a PG-13 movie. Because this has gotten a lot of the controversy, the most of how this happened as well, which is a lot very more different, which has gotten a lot of happening since violent video games and Marilyn Manson were a thing at the time just yet, until the 90s arrived as well, as far as I know. And however, an 18-year-old was stabbed to death after seeing the movie The Warriors in theater at a movie, and a 19-year-old was shot and brutally wounded after seeing the movie when a certain movie theater in California has stopped showing the film after this incident happened, especially during this whole controversy about this film as well, particularly of how that happened. But for overall, this movie has spawned from the critics, because this movie has gotten the criticism by the film critics like Siskel and Roger Ebert. They wanted to put because Siskel and Ebert never liked this certain movie for some of the obvious, just because they're film critics. That's the thing, though. But for overall, this movie has gotten considered a cult classic, though, where any movie might be a huge cult classic. The Warriors has got to be considered a cult following, which has got a lot of attention for the fans as well, whoever grew up seeing that movie, as far as I know, particularly, to think for a film like this as well. And that's particularly considered the reason of how this goes. Like a lot of movies from the 70s, this movie has wanted to become a cult classic favorite film. Not necessarily old movies in general, but it's become one of those movies that receiving a cult following as well. Especially for movies that are becoming a cult classic as well. And there is also the Warriors video game that was also as well, particularly, which is like a tie-in to the film put out by Rockstar Games, that are known for the Grand Theft Auto video games as well. And for the thing like this as well, there were action figures, Funko Pop figures, especially the merchandise of the film, like the Warriors as well. every piece of merchandise of how this goes as well. And however, for the soundtrack, I really loved the music, especially for the film like The Warriors as well, because for the best of the music from what I like to call a 70s rock atmospheric soundtrack, especially if you hear because it was composed by Barry Dvorak. And also the inspiration for the gangs as well, like the Baseball Furies. I mean, this house, the big inspiration came from Walter Hill, from his interest of the likeness between the baseball teams and the. But then again, the inspiration for the Baseball Furies is that this is particularly the thing of how became the main inspiration, especially from Walter Hill, particularly of his likeness for the glam rock group Kiss, as well as the baseball teams as well. Just despite how the makeup goes, especially for the Baseball Furies, it makes a striking, barely resemblance to the rock group Kiss. Just because the band Kiss was popular in the 70s, it's really that big as well. But I think it's the inspiration for what Walter Hill had created it as well. And also, I liked the scenes of, especially where the Warriors fought the Baseball Furies as well. This gives a little feel of a Akira Kurosawa-esque type feel in a demonstration of how they fight with those baseball bats, like a sword battle. Expecting inspiration coming from a Akira Kurosawa type feel as well. And for overall, especially if you want to get a movie to watch, to binge watch on something, just to give it a feel like this, like, especially if you want to binge watch on something like The Warriors, get it. I highly recommend it. If you have it on DVD or Blu-ray as well. I mean, for my thoughts on the movie, I mean, I wasn't really impressed with the comic as well, particularly in the director's cut version. Even though there are two versions, you had the director's cut version where they put on all of these like comic book transitions of how they put it in this film like that. And also, you also got like these, I believe it was the original theatrical cut version. If you want to see the version of The Warriors, make sure you got to check out his theatrical cut version of the film, because that makes a good, proper way to watch a movie like The Warriors in a theatrical cut kind of way. Especially if you have it on either the old VHS release or on DVD, which it has the original theatrical cut version of this particular film, like The Warriors. That's particularly as far as I know, for what I can discover, especially for a film like this as well. And I could put this movie on the par with other films like The Wanderers. That's another 1979 movie as well. Well, even though 1979 was the same year we got The Wanderers, another type of film like this, The Warriors has got a lot of the attention the most, particularly as far as I know, accordingly, for the fact as well. Even though this movie did came out in the 70s, that's the thing of how I can dig this movie, because like a lot of our movies and television series, as well as anime from the 70s, this movie, The Warriors, always wanted to have these different versions, like where they put the director's cut version and the original theatrical cut version. If I could find a version that has the one that I can binge watch, make sure you had to check out is the original theatrical cut version of this film, if you really want to. Especially if you want to binge watch this movie, especially if you have it on DVD. And my score for this movie, like The Warriors, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. And a 5 out of 5 stars as well. Especially for a movie. And also, if you like this movie, I'm going to put this on... If you like this movie, The Warriors, I highly recommend you to check out other movie recommendations like 48 Hours, The Wanderers. There's any movies that are similar to The Warriors out there, especially if you ever gotten some of those movie recommendations, that's why. So that's going to be it for my re-review on the movie The Warriors for today's re-review on a movie for today, guys. Thank you for watching, but before we go, here's what I'm going to say for this one. Well, this is the first time I wanted to do a movie like this as well, and even though I've already looked back on doing my movie review on The Warriors back in 2018, I think I did a movie review of this once. Now I'm going to do a re-review, which I reviewed it twice, but this time in honor of its anniversary for this movie as well. So, happy anniversary to this movie, because it's been so many years since 1979, which it came out on this day, especially for a film like The Warriors. I must say, because I loved the scene where the Warriors fought the Baseball Furies. There are some moments, especially for the Warriors, as well, when they encountered this girl, especially when Swan met Mercy in that film. I mean, that's particularly how the production goes as well, as which I can tell as that, from what I'm saying about as well. Hope subscribe for more content, Anime Plan, Patreon, Anime List links will be in the description down below if you want to check those links out in the description down below at your leisure at some point. And also, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on this video if you like as well, of what do you think of the movie The Warriors. Just let me know in the comments section below. Smack the like button if you enjoyed the video. Be sure to click on the subscribe button. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, RuRoniK95. Feel free to join my channel, especially if you're new to my channel as a newcomer as well. Especially if you're new to my channel. Smack the notifications bell button. Be sure to get notified also as well. Keep you updated, just to keep you notified also as well. And also, that's all I got for today. Wow. It's been like maybe many years since I did this review on that. Maybe I reviewed this movie once, twice, but this is the second time for the re-review of this movie. Because I wanted to look back on how I can do a redo review of this movie. It's just like how I did with my re-review on movies like Detroit Rock City, Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Mortal Kombat has a lot to do with. I have got the feeling of how I've been looking back, that's why. But then again, that's considering the fact of how I wanted to do a re-review of The Warriors, because I wanted to do this in honor of its anniversary, that's why. This is RuRoniK95 saying, thank you for watching my video, and I'm glad you liked it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you soon for the next video. Hope you have a great day. This is RuRoniK95 signing off. Thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you soon for more videos. Take care.